Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining. This morning, we are joined by Raj Mishra, who is the Senior Manager of Global Lifecycle Project Management at Moderna. It is an absolute pleasure to be with him here today. So thank you, Raj, for joining.
Thank you, Madison. I really appreciate this opportunity to interview.
Of course. And Raj is a dynamic supply chain professional with over 9 years of experience in the industry in specific industries of pharmaceuticals in very different roles such as supply chain analyst, supply chain planning and logistics, customer service, and project management. And I really want to talk to Raj today and let him share a little bit more about who he is as a person, where he comes from, how he really got interested in the field of supply chain and specifically lifecycle management, and if you could just expand upon that, Raj, your background and any relevant connections to sustainability or supply chain that you want to share with our audience today, please do so now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madison. So, first of all, very good morning, Madison, and to all the listeners. I really appreciate this opportunity to interview and share my thoughts about the sustainable supply chain and talk a little bit about myself and my background. So, basically, I grew up in West India. It's a city in the city of Mumbai. I'm youngest one of all the five siblings in my family. And since childhood, science has been an integral part of my life. Considering my strong interest in the science, I pursued my bachelor's in engineering and then MBA in operations and management. And immediately after completing my bachelor's, I got an opportunity to work into supply chain management. So that's how I started off my career as a supply chain analyst. At that time, I just didn't know anything. I was just out of college. But as I started working, my interest grew, and since then I'm working with I'm working just with supply chain. So and during my experience work is into FMCG and pharmaceutical industry. So during one of my assignment into one of the pharmaceutical industry, I was working in the supply planning. It was a program associated with WHO. Basically, it was to eradication of leprosy. So it was a big project where we were implementing supply chain management or supply planning network for spanning to 40 countries. And this was a great platform where actually I worked very deeply and implemented great solution to supply chain network, which helped us to supply the product in time and so that patients get the medicine on time. And this was the time where I really got a lot of interest into supply chain. And I decided, okay, this is the time where I wanted to see how the global supply chain works, and I decided to expand my horizon, and I decided to pursue my master's from University of Texas at Arlington, and that's how I moved from Mumbai to Texas. And while I was pursuing my master's, I had a great opportunity to learn and understand how the global supply chain works, how the global processes work. And I've also had a chance, to work with a med device company where I was managing a life cycle management portfolio for a wide area of products, where this was an incredible opportunity for me, impacting patients across the globe. To helping see patients brilliantly. It was an eye care company. So this was the company where I implemented a lot of solutions in terms of life cycle management and divesting, pruning, how to efficiently manage the SKU portfolios. So this is where I learned. I had a hands-on experience in the med device industry for the life cycle management, and then as I kept on working, my desire in supply chain interest I was always curious to know what's next, and that really gave me opportunity to work for the finest pharmaceutical companies. And very recently, I was offered and positioned in a global supply chain function of a leading COVID vaccine manufacturer in US, and that that was a great opportunity, and I accepted it. It is an opportunity to you get an opportunity to fight for bigger cause, to fight the global pandemic. So basically, in short, this is my work experience in supply chain in pharmaceutical, and my experience and endeavor have always been to sustain good health and well-being of people by managing these products to reach them at appropriate time and need in an efficient manner.
Thank you so much, Raj. It really sounds like, and I know that your professional experience and your educational experience has spanned so many different industries, and you've made such great change already in all of your roles that you've participated in. And I think that brings me to ask you now, specifically now in your current role and your experience with the pharmaceutical industry, How have you seen the pharmaceutical industry transform operations to be more sustainable over time? It can be specifically to their supply chain processes because that's what you're expert in, or their global life cycle management. How have this industry transformed a bit in, maybe recently during the pandemic to make sure that there is sustainability from start to finish? And for example, working with Moderna to make sure that they can really deliver these, global solutions and specifically for the US in terms of vaccines and whatnot.
That's a great question, Madison. I feel pharmaceutical companies have invested in a lot of time and effort to make operations more sustainable over a period of time. One thing that I would like to say is like, in terms of me, ensuring sustainable supply chain is not just making it efficient in terms of money, less cost. It is a holistic approach. Like you have end-to-end supply chain, you get the product in time, you have sustainable supply. It is not like once we might have a short-term profit, but it might negatively impact the supplies in long term. So that is something, in my opinion, is not a good sustainable approach. But pharmaceutical companies are really doing a great job. Like the industry ensures social sustainability by focusing on providing access to affordable medicines and treatments to developing countries with weaker healthcare systems. They have made dedicated teams, operation team, to deal with these countries who lack infrastructure and underfunded healthcare system. By doing so, they are making sure that these low income countries are not deprived of any medicine that they should be getting. The other thing that I would like to emphasize is, they are more focused on product quality. Companies have adopted ethical standards combined with patient oriented business model while leveraging the digital technology in operations to provide quality healthcare products to the customers. This is really good. It might sound okay. How does quality impact the supply chain solution? I always say like everything is interrelated. Global supply chain function is interrelated to various different functions within the team, within the organization. So let's say if you have a good quality product, which makes sure that there is no delay in the supplies, there is no reverse logistics involved, which is like in turn reducing the carbon footprint to a greater extent. So that's how companies are focusing on good quality, which is eventually helping reduce the wastage within the system, within the global supply chain network. Also, the other thing that I think the companies are doing is they're optimizing the supply chain, having everyone different functions in the company by bringing them under one page, by practicing like integrated business planning, SNOP processes. So this has not only enhanced the value but also ensured environmental sustainability. There's no confusion within the teams. They know what one goal is and how we are achieving it. This is very, very critical, as I say, as the company's footprint increases. And if no clarity within the team, that increases in terms of chaos and also in terms of the wastage. One very good example that I would give is like pharma company. If you see the stats, they are one of the biggest generator of the wastage in terms of plastic, because every medicine that you have has a one or the other single packaging material which is used once and then disposed of. So recently companies have moved on to multiple use, which means like they buy eco-friendly shipping components, and that can be used multiple times. So this is something, in order to implement, companies have made it easy for the practitioners. Okay, if they get the product, they made it possible, they build a process downstream that those shippers can be returned back to those suppliers or manufacturers. In this way, what we did, we reduced the wastage to the landfills, also making sure that the same shipper that was initially used once, it is now being used couple of times, multiple times. And this was not only possible by just implementing or just having it on paper. They build a integrated process, making sure you have a well documented, well processed for returning the shippers back to the manufacturers and logistics company. So these are the few examples where I believe pharmaceutical companies are doing great, and they are also ensuring, working with suppliers who are having a great ethical standards, making sure the manufacturing facilities are up to the mark. They are following all the rules and regulations. Wherever possible, switching to the renewable source of energies, these are a great examples which pharmaceutical companies are taking initiatives in order to make sure they are becoming more sustainable over the period of time.
Yes, and I definitely agree here with you. I know that at ISCEA also we always talk about a holistic approach to sustainable supply chain. And like you're talking about, it's not just about one component of the supply chain. It's all about you have to look all the way to the suppliers, to the packaging, to figuring out how you can connect your flows throughout your supply chain to reduce the waste in the end. It's all about integrating the behavior of the consumer and those that are managing the supply chain itself. And I think we're kind of here both talking about the concept of a circular supply chain and really trying to mitigate any of those waste. And if there are waste, find value in waste and regenerate some products or some packaging to be the most usable form throughout the supply chain for everyone.
Absolutely, the very well said, Madison. And that's a future of that's industry 4.0, where we have to see a value in everything, even it's a waste. How we can take out value out of it. If it's not value generation, at times I will take a minute and just say that at times it sounds like when we are going for a sustainable supply chain, it increases the value, but it increases the cost of operation. But that's not the case. When we start deep diving into it, we might come across processes which will help us to fix the original issues, and that can help us to increase the efficiencies, and which is a win-win situation. We get the efficiency, there is no increase in the cost. At the same time, we are contributing in a great way to the environment, having a sustainable operations.
Yes, and it's very exciting to hear you have this mindset because in a role like yours as global lifecycle project manager, it's really important that you see these opportunities and you don't see them as what potential upfront costs you could face, but then you see a long-term value. And like I said, sustainable transformation takes time and it takes commitment. And so you really need a mindset like the one that you are talking about that you have here, to see the value in waste, to see the value in processes that you might not have even discovered yet. And I think I want to jump a little bit here and talk about your experience in med devices and how we can talk about how those type of product engineering and product design, how can those roles continue to shape the life cycle and the supply chains that those devices are used in?
Absolutely, that's a good question. So, yeah, I know biotech industry. There are within the pharmaceutical industry, there are different types of industry like med device, biotech. So, talking specifically like about the med devices, what I believe and what I always practice is like, in order to have a sustainable practice and sustainable supply chain lifecycle management, we always have to have an integrated business operations. What do I mean by integrated business operations? Like collaboration with suppliers who practice sustainability, data supported global supply network, making sure sub manufacturing and supply is planned in a way that supplying point is strategically located. um, it, it should not be something like that I'm supplying one from one part of the world to another part of the world. This is something, a great waste of resources what we have. So whenever we are designing the network, we have to make sure that uh, we are strategically locating the manufacturing location, distribution center, making sure that we cover all the locations in the world in a strategic manner. And then also use of renewable source of energy wherever possible. For example, manufacturing operations using renewable sources, wind energy. So this would require an initial investment, but this would be definitely very long term, profitable for the even for the business. And the
Yeah.
important thing that I believe is continuous innovation in the manufacturing packaging operations. It is, you have to we need to have a dedicated supply chain R&D as well. How we can innovate and how we can eliminate the waste within the supply chain, how we can eliminate the waste within the packaging operations, how we can come up with a packaging strategy that will help us to deliver the same thing what is required with a much better way, and less wastage.
I think that's something we also agree on here. And my next question was, do you believe that sustainable product design is integral to long-term sustainability? But by your last discussion here, I can tell that that is the case. And so I guess we'll go here and say, how can we promote these changes in a positive direction in terms of R&D, design, product research? How can we sit back and, you know, allow companies, how we drive them to achieve these changes for the better?
Yes, absolutely. This is a great question. So I think for this to happen, I believe product engineers and product managers should be looped in, and they are the ones who should be made and who should be the one making an architect of the supply chain network by analyzing and improving the processes. So there are two ways. Like one is the continuous day-to-day operation, traditional way of doing the business, and we need to have a dedicated team of supply chain engineers, product managers who would be analyzing and improving the processes of company's supply chain. And supply chain, as I said before, it is an incorporates network of people, organization, resources, informations, and activities involved in delivering goods from raw materials to consumer products. So supply chain or product engineers can help in following a collaborative approach, bringing one sustainable, profitable goal, making the process efficient, designing global supply chain operations, and the main of it, be the champion of greener supply chain, encourage the team, be the brand ambassador of the innovation, encourage people to come up with ideas, and that ideas how it can be transformed into an execution operation. That is something the product engineers and supply chain engineers needs to do from a supply chain R&D perspective.
That's great. And I think that you've definitely touched upon here that it's a commitment, and it comes from having those really progressive minded individuals in your supply chain, as well as realizing that it's a transformative process and it takes time, and you need to always be continuing to develop for a sustainable way. You need to, even if you find one solution, it's not the end solution. There's always a way to progress, and there's always a way to become even more sustainable. You might think that you found a great product design, but there's so much potential there to keep even expanding upon your positive change. So there's so much we can really do here as long as we continue to have individuals like yourself in leadership positions driving these changes. And I know that you
Absolutely.
are such an advisor and a mentor in the industry in several platforms, and you are a board member of ISCEA. So can you give us a little bit more information about your role and your current advisor and mentor role as well in this industry? Because not only do you have a really strong position at Moderna managing these global life cycle projects and creating great change there, but you have a more global perspective and influence as well on the industry, and that is so powerful and impactful because you really have the power to keep driving these positive changes every single day. So it'd be great if you could share with our audience a little bit more information about how you mentor and you advise others on these types of topics.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm associated with ISCA in a position of board members, and ISCA is a great organization, supply chain, and one of the oldest organization for supply chains. So in my board member capacity, I'm part of the great supply chain academics and also the industry leaders who are part of who discuss the best practices and how we can make supply chain more efficient. And like as part of the board member, I was given an opportunity to do the presentation in the SC Supply Chain Technology Conference, the event for supply chain executives, that embrace technology. And the topic that I presented was mitigating risk through the right choice of tool, platform, and processes. Here in this presentation, I clearly presented my views on IBP and SNOP and various models that I believe can make a sustainable impact on the way supply chain work. Uh, you know what, the future is uncertain and it will always be. The best way to face this is to be prepared, and you can accomplish this by looking at your internal and external constraints like capacity, suppliers, and developing a good understanding across the organization of what these challenges are. Use the SNOP process to improve the forecast and build trust across the company. You cannot control the future, but you can be ready for it. This even help conserve environment by optimizing the use of the scarce resource and planning for any contingencies in advance. So this was the presentation that I recently did in the SCTech conference, and I'm also associated with a university that is a leading university for the MS in supply chain program, where I'm part of the industry advisory board, where I do recommendation for what should be in the syllabus as part of the curriculum for the upcoming supply chain professionals. And also I'm a mentor to the upcoming supply chain younger generation folks.
Wow, thank you so much, Raj. I think that you have touched upon so many different aspects with us today, and it's clear that your role not only stems in your traditional, everyday, typical professional role, but you are really a mentor to others around the world, and you create a space that is inspiring, it's transformative, and it is positive, and that is what we need to continue these sustainable changes. Yes, they might seem a little overwhelming at first, but that commitment to R&D and finding solutions throughout the supply chain is so important, and it's definitely driven by professionals like yourself. I know that ISCA is really grateful for your support and the mentorship that you create in our community here. So thank you so much for your time today. And if there is any other thing that you would like to share about your current role in sustainability or supply chain, please do so. But I think that our audience is really inspired today by the types of change that you're making, your perspective on sustainability, and how you currently and continue to drive change each and every day.
Thank you, Madison. I really appreciate, and I'm glad that I'm associated with an organization like ISCA, who is a strong promoter of sustainable supply chain. And as you see, we are really growing fast and encouraging, coming up with a lot of courses in terms of ISCA sustainable supply chain uh, processes and all those stuff. And I really encourage the listeners and viewers to come across. To have a look on the website of ISCA and see how this can be useful for them, and is there something that they can learn from this ISCA curriculum that will be very good for them in the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Raj. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today. I'm really excited to continue to share this conversation with our global audience. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Madison. Thank you. I really appreciate it.